This is a Bulldog Radio podcast.
The Ferris State Bulldogs have upset the nation's number 2 ranked team. Wide open. Taylor is going to take this one to the house. Touchdown Bulldogs.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in to the most valuable sports podcast. Brandon Worth, we are with Joe Nagy, and boy, was this one we have all been waiting for.
Yeah, this episode is one that we've been having on the calendar for a really long time. We are super excited to bring it to you guys because we have this has really been the goal for basically since we started the podcast, to be able to have this type of guest on and to be able to finally have it. I mean, it just kind of shows a testament to what we've been able to work on, Brandon, and how far this podcast has come.
Not only that, but to you, the fans have done to support this show as well. Give yourselves a round of applause because you helped make this happen. Yes, Dr. Bill Pink will be stopping by momentarily to join us to talk about his journey to becoming the president of Ferris State University and his athletic background, which I don't think many people actually know a lot about. It is very, very cool what he's done in the world of athletics. So we'll talk to him about that, as well as we'll get into the NFL draft. I know there's a lot of Lions fans out there that are shocked, confused, and absolutely irate. And I will say why you shouldn't be, as well as we'll go through all of the first round picks kind of and grade them throughout and see which ones surprised us. Because I know, Joe, there was a couple that surprised me besides the Lions, of course. But I think the Lions made a lot of headlines last night.
Yeah, I was not too sure what Brad Holmes had in mind, but it's very exciting to see what's going to happen with this draft. But Brandon, rundown?
Yeah, let's get through it here.
Let's get into it.
So starting today on the 28th, we got softball. It is senior day. So if you're listening to this right now, get on over to the softball field.
3 o'clock and 5 o'clock.
3 o'clock, 5 o'clock. Wayne State is in town for the final home game of the season. And breaking news, your boys are on the call. Wait, hold on.
Game 2 we're on the call, baby. Let's
Game
go.
2, we will be on the mic so you can hop on Full Sports as well if you're not around. And it should be some pretty big games. These were really some games that I'm sure that we've been looking forward to, obviously, with senior day festivities and get to celebrate all the accomplishments of all of our 4-year players.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the biggest thing, too, is this is a team that we've beaten on the road. We went down to Detroit, beat them in some lower scoring games. And I think these are 2 games that really can help pivot our momentum because we got a big rest of the weekend on deck as well. Saginaw Valley, we have a makeup game as well as we got to play that team down south once again after the rain out just a little bit ago.
Yeah, that's going to be a really solid game. We also play Grand Valley and all that stuff. Men's tennis is also in action this week against Tiffin for the first part of the NCAA tournament in Indianapolis, Indiana. They're going to be taking on them at 2 o'clock tomorrow or Saturday if you're listening to this. So that's going to be an interesting one. And then honestly, track and field is the only other thing going on, Brandon.
Yeah, it's a pretty light weekend. We're getting towards the end here. I know everybody's probably stressed about exam week coming up, but just relax. It's almost there.
Take breath and you got it, brother.
Yeah, you got it. Make sure you study this weekend and you guys are going to kill it. But yeah, I mean, especially going through this weekend, obviously softball playing at home, get the bats rolling. Let's shut them down defensively. This is a momentum boosting game. Tennis, obviously, Tiffin. This was a team we already played on the road here earlier this year. Squeaked out a 4-3 win down there in Sandusky. So this is a team that we have beaten before, but they're a very, very good team. They have been for many years. So being sure 1 through 6, we're lining up, get that doubles point, get the momentum early, and let our talent and singles take over. And then obviously track and field will be at Davenport, as well as a little insider information. Some guys are going to extra weekend at Grand Valley State, which is late Saturday night.
Okay.
Your boys running steeple under the lights. I'm stoked.
Dude, that's going to be sick.
It's going to be exciting.
That's going to be so cool. But a lot of Bulldogs in action this weekend, Brandon.
Oh, so many.
Almost done with the school year, and man, it's going to be a good one. But can't wait, man.
Can't wait, man. But I know you guys have been waiting way too long, and so are we. So without further ado,
let's swing it to the interview.
Now joining us here in studio, it's an honor, it's a pleasure. We got the huge boss in here, Dr. Bill Pink himself. Dr. Pink, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Guys, I am so excited about this. Thank you for having me.
Dr. Pink, it's such an honor to have you on and be able to take such time out of your busy schedule. I mean, with commencement coming up, we can't express how thankful we are for you to come on. But first question for you, I mean, you've had an illustrious career, player at Oklahoma Christian University, and as also just being a coach, AD, and all that type of stuff. I mean, talk about what that journey has been like for you from being a college athlete to now, a president of a university. Just go through that.
Yeah. So Joe, I'll tell you, it has been God has blessed me with a fun ride. I mean, when I look back at 30 plus years, of a career. Don't do the math on that. It's been fun, and that I will tell you from a standpoint of being a student athlete to spending time as a coach, as an athletic director. Those things, when you talk about prepping you for roles like I have now, it was tremendous because there are so many elements of that bleed over into the work I do now, leading a university. The idea of how you try to have a team that works well together. In my case, in my vice presidents, my direct reports, having a team that works well together, seeing why in some cases where we're having gaps and how do you do something to get at that gap? That's important. How do you build that team? How do you play on their strengths? I mean, as a coach, I didn't have my 6'9" center. Last thing he needs to be doing back then, last thing he needed to think about is shooting a three because he couldn't hit it. So it wasn't his job though. His job was to get in and push people around and score on the inside. So it's the same thing in leadership. You put people in the right place and take full advantage of their strengths. And in some cases, they complement what your weaknesses are as a leader so that the whole, as far as the leadership is team and the leadership dynamic is concerned, truly hits at all cylinders. Where someone is weak, you have to bring someone else in who's strong, so that you're able to have the best success of an organization.
Absolutely. No, I know, especially your time here, especially one thing that you've emphasized, especially considering athletics, is how important that relates to academics and how student athlete really can help build the image of a university. Just talk about that whole philosophy. And I know, especially for me, when I first got on campus and we heard your speech about the fishbowl and really how that applies as well for just the image that athletes have at the university.
Yeah, and Brandon, I'll tell you, the thing is, our student athletes, when you think about a university campus like ours, a successful athletic program for years, the most visible thing on our college or university campus, the most visible thing from a national perspective, we have several. So we have awesome academic programs that are known nationally. People talk to me nationally about what we do in welding engineering technology, our construction management. Folks send people from all over the country here. You need to go to Ferris State for that. Those are two. Our College of Optometry, Pharmacy, those things are known. But when it comes to a national spotlight, truly a spotlight, it's hard to find something stronger than an institution that wins a back-to-back national championship. Hard to get that. I had during that national championship game, I had folks texting me from all over the country. Hey, I'm watching a team play on TV. You guys are great. All right. I remember one coming in from a friend who lives in Washington State. He's sitting there watching our football team win a national championship. Several years ago, when our basketball team, when they go all the way to the national championship, we even had folks in Seattle last fall with our women's soccer team. So it has this national presence that if we're not able to recognize that and leverage that, we're missing. You have to leverage the good. You have to take things that are working well and blow that out to the masses to say, here's one of the many things that this institution does and does really well. And so, when I was hired, I said, you know what? If we win another national championship in football, I said, we're going to have a year-long celebration. And you notice, seems like we always come up with something else.
Yeah.
Celebrating the national championship. Why? Two reasons. One, for the national prominence, but also how that kind of thing also gets your campus excited. And you have to take advantage of both. And athletics is one of the main catalysts to have that happen on a university campus.
For sure.
Yeah, and especially one of the big things that has made you such a liked president already is your ability to connect with people. You're such a genuine person. I mean, have you had anybody in your life that has kind of taught you those type of things of how to treat people and how that's been able to carry over in a lot of the success that you've seen in your life?
Joe, I'll tell you, for me, first of all, I tell people that anything good you see of me is not of me. I happen to be a person of faith, and anything you see good of me is is coming from somewhere not of this world. The bad stuff in me is probably more me. So I will tell you that it's that influence, number one. But number two, My leadership style, and I think this when I talk about leadership to groups, typically a leadership style is so made up of a sum of many parts with a bit of your own thinking, right? So there are things about my leadership that I see various leaders in my lifetime taught me. There's a side of me that comes from a good friend of mine in Oklahoma who I served under him as an associate dean when he was dean of a college of education. Um, uh, Jim Mackle, it was his name. I see the passion and compassion he had as a leader. I mean, he's a compassionate leader that showed care for people and would stop and take time to talk to people and would do what I do a lot. And my assistants, they drives them crazy. Go overtime with a person because we still have to, I need to help you get to a place and help you feel listened to. And so that was that's a part of me. But I also had another individual I served as vice president under, and she was Natalie Shirley. She was the president at Oklahoma State University in Oklahoma City, and she had compassion. She had love for people, but she also had a firm hand in saying, "Yeah, but this is where we have to go, and we have to get there." She had a strong business background, and so I see parts of her in me as well, from a standpoint of, "Yeah, but here's where we have to get to, and when are we going to get there? And let's get there yesterday." Because in higher education, we're known to be slow, and I hate that. And so she taught me that part. My own parents taught me a lot in terms of how you care for people. One of the things that Natalie used to say is you always have to give people a soft place to land. And what that means is sometimes, even when you're dealing with someone who is messed up in their performance or is at a bad place, in a low place, give them a soft place to land. Give them a place that they feel like at the end of the day, I and this university still values and takes care of them in every situation.
For sure. And especially, I know, I mean, you can use an example from the whole interview we've done so far. And I know I've been to a couple of the banquets that you've spoke at. There's no question that anybody that hears you, public speaking, storytelling, off the charts. What are some of those things that you learned to really reach that point? And especially, I mean, just how do you prepare some of those things? Because it feels like you're going off the cuff and it's like, I would have planned 2 hours and not gotten to that point.
Okay. So Brandon, you're tapping on something there. So, and what I mean by that is, when I was a faculty member, for several years, both in Nebraska and in Oklahoma, a bit out in Oregon as faculty. One of my main classes I taught, one of my first classes that I taught was public speaking. So basic speech. I was mass comm was my minor. Physical education was my major in my undergrad. And so I still love to teach that basic speech course. Love to teach that because public speaking is something that I like to help people feel relaxed about. Typically that was the last class that people want to take is, oh gosh, I got to take speech.
Yeah.
I wanted to help them get to that point where they would not only get past that class, but actually successfully get to a point where at the end of it, they're going, you know what, I can do this. And I did it. And so for me, public speaking, the Lord has blessed me with that piece. The reason why it's a challenge for me is because I never, and I hate to use extreme words, but in this case, I'm going to say it. I never like to or ever use a manuscript. It's just me. I just don't like to do that. There are people who do manuscript speeches that do amazing work. But for me, I want to have eye contact with my crowd from start to finish because I want to establish in whatever time we're doing it, I want to establish relationship. And once I can establish relationship through that presentation, by the time it's over with, my goal every time I speak is to be able to look at the crowd. There's an internal ruler in my head as to at what level that I have them right here, palm of hand. So I'm looking and I'm always assessing, do I have them? And when I see the moment I have them, that's when we really need to get across. Here's where we're trying to get to. So for me, public speaking is I'm fortunate enough to have moved in my career to a place where public speaking is it's a challenge from a perspective of how well can we get it done in terms of getting the message across. And so if you ever see me with a manuscript or notes or something, you may see a little note thing come out. But if you ever see me reading a manuscript, get on me, okay? Say, wait a minute.
I got you.
Yeah, do that for me.
Remember this
we'll hold
episode.
you accountable.
Yes.
We'll hold you accountable for
yes,
sure.
There's a little pride. And if you see it, that means that typically when I do that, that means there's something very exact that I need to say to the people.
Mhm.
Let's say something is happening on campus that is so vital that there's an exact piece that I need to get out. You will see something of that, but otherwise, I just need to establish relationship.
That's incredible.
Yeah, for sure. Wow, I'll have to write that down. That's a great tip to have.
We'll bookmark
for sure.
this part of the episode. If
Yeah.
you see a manuscript.
Exactly.
Call him out.
But for especially for being a president, it's such a busy lifestyle for you. I mean, when you do have some sort of downtime, what do you usually do when you kick your feet back and kind of relax a little bit?
Joe, that's easy. So number one, family is important. And my wife and I have been married for over 20 years. And we try to do a lot of downtime together if we can. Our daughter, who's a student here at Ferris, Lydia, whenever we can get her in on it, we love for her to hang out with us. And that's always a joy. But typically my two means of therapy are golf and fishing.
Wow.
So I'm a year-round fisherman.
I'm right there with you, man. I'm right there with you.
Including I with my knee injury, I missed a whole season of ice fishing. That was upsetting to me because that's my winter jam is to ice fish. So I did not get to do that this winter because of this knee injury. But I am just fired up about the fact that as soon as it's a tad bit warmer, I'm out. I'm on the lake. I'm somewhere fishing. And the hard part about that is being able to squeeze in either fishing and golf, because I love to golf. What we call a really good day is when we can start out the day on the golf course and end the day on the lake. And so we're smashing a golf ball and then smashing some probably largemouth bass.
Oh yeah.
That to me, that is therapeutic to me. Both of those.
Are you the type of person that's going to sneak a fishing pole on the golf course, try to slam a few in those type of lakes too? Or?
So I will tell you that if I were not in the position I am, I would probably be more prone to it. But as president, if it'd be fun until you got caught, right?
Yeah, that is true.
And
Yeah.
that one makes news. University president found illegally fishing on Tullymore. That would not go well. I try to avoid that. I'm even the guy who, if it's not seasoned to keep a bass, I'm not going to keep it. Not seasoned. If it's, I try to adhere to the rules as much as possible on things like that. So no, I probably would. Probably.
Probably.
It depends on how big the fish are.
Because I was gonna say, Joe, you've seen it. You guys have seen it. Yeah, I've been on a golf course and I go past a little pond or a good size pond, and I'm seeing monsters swimming in there, and I'm going, is anyone doing anything about this? And so, yeah, I'm there.
They toss a bait and they'd smack it for sure.
I mean, they're probably hungry. They've been in there for a while. But
yeah, they don't want to eat golf balls all day.
Oh, no, of course not. But kind of speaking of the lifestyle a little bit, obviously being the university president, got to be a tough task day to day, especially when it comes to scheduling. No, we had to go well in advance to get this to happen. But kind of more in the day in the life. I mean, when you wake up in the morning to when you fall asleep at night, I mean, what kind of goes in there? Because I'm sure, academics wise or public relations wise, athletic wise, I can't imagine of meetings and people that you meet throughout a given day.
Brandon, I'll tell you on that. What's fun about it, and it's actually fun to me, and that whenever I speak to, occasionally I will be invited to speak to folks across the country who are in different cohorts looking at leadership, wanting to be a college or university president one day. Love talking to those groups because I love to talk to them about a day in the life and to help them understand this is a typical day. Are you okay with this? Because the next day will probably look totally different. And so that's one of the joys of it is that every day looks different and every day has so much variety to go in a day and I sometimes laugh at it because to start out the day, maybe sitting and talking to one of my vice presidents about what he or she is doing, to then moving toward going over to the elementary. This was the actual day, going over to the elementary school to read to kids because of the little ones coming in, reading this big huge guy walking in. It's always fun. Reading to kids, then to leave there and go to a luncheon where we're talking to a group of students who are having a luncheon on whatever organization they represent. But then you leave there, then you may be going driving over to Grand Rapids because there's a meeting over there of something going on, and then that evening you may find yourself right back here, or maybe you have to go all the way into Detroit because of a dinner there. And so it's the variety of things. A day like today where I spent time this morning speaking to some of our advisors on campus. Before that, speaking to, we're actually preparing to make a pretty cool announcement this afternoon. So getting that thing ready. This interview, now we have torchbearer luncheon at noon, having a conversation, actually leaving there while that's going on and going out on the quad because of one of our groups on campus having a men's march, going and kind of doing some stuff with them, then heading in to do an interview on sports radio. So that's fun to me. The variety of things, that I love it because in one case I'm talking about my background, another case I'm talking about students and where we're going. This afternoon I'll be talking about our sports, talking about athletics. So that to me is fun because the variety of it keeps the energy.
Yeah, absolutely. It's 1,000,000 miles an hour. It's nonstop.
2 to 3 million.
Even bump it up a little bit more.
It can get it drives my assistant crazy because she has to. I try not to touch the calendar. That's my rule. I do not touch the calendar because I tell them, my 2 assistants, I tell them the calendar is yours, and I just say I need this scheduled, and then they work magic to get that done. And sometimes it means that something is delayed for a while before we can get to it. But we want to get to everything we possibly can. You always just guys need to, whenever you talk to them, say, you know what? I am so sorry. Just apologize to them for the fact of what they have to go through.
Oh, absolutely. And especially you mentioned your daughter earlier. She was able to really fit into a really good role with athletics, with especially those game day operations. Talk about how special that is for you to be able to see her already be able to just kind of be in that Ferris State culture and have a part in it.
Yeah, Joe, she was with us at Grand Rapids Community College. She started there as a freshman. That was last year, my last year being there. And when I was named as president of Ferris, we told her, you know what, do what you want to do. If you want to stay at GRCC and finish an associate, then transfer somewhere, do that. If you want to go somewhere else, do that. Or if you want to come to Ferris, whatever you want to do. And she gave it a lot of thought. And she said, you know what, I think I want to come to Ferris. And so for her to come and be here on campus, living on campus, and seeing her just kind of really get her own jam and really thrive in what she's doing. She's not only involved with athletics, she's involved with real life, one group on campus. Her involvement with athletics in terms of game day operations, I think that's been awesome for her. It pulled something out of her that she knew she had, but then was able to share and do some things. I keep bothering her about the fact that, hey, sweetie, you need to look at doing this, long term. What this could be something. She's like, no. It's probably not her end game. She's really into. She's a major in healthcare management, and so she's really thinking in that regard, specifically towards sonography. So, but it's cool when we see how well she's acclimated to Ferris State, and has some awesome friends that she's made here, and she really gets into the campus life of what fits her, and that's been just a joy for us to watch.
Awesome.
Absolutely. And Dr. Pink, we won't take up too much of your time because I know you got something going on probably in the next 30 minutes. So we appreciate you being here, obviously. It means the world to us, especially for our show. Last question for you. It's a tradition question we ask everyone we have on the show. I'm sure it's probably a loaded question for you because there's probably so many things. What's been your favorite thing about being here at Ferris State and being a Bulldog?
Oh, that's easy. Students. To me, if ever I am wondering and ever I'm having a bad day and bad days come, where you're just going, man, what What's going on here? Whenever those days come, you just hang out with students for a while because you guys always remind me of why I'm doing this. It's not free. It's for what we're doing here with our students. And so I love spending time with our faculty and staff, administration. I have an awesome board. End of the day, I mean, hanging out and spending time finding out what student stories are, what students are doing, what they want to do, where they want to do it, where are you going? That to me, it speaks to me because when students tell me, here's where I'm going, then it is incumbent upon us to make sure we are making that path as smooth as possible. We don't always do it perfect, but that's where we're trying to get to, is making the smoothest paths possible so that our students finish here and get into not just a job, they get into a career path that will set them on a trajectory that will be able to feed themselves and their families for decades to come. So to me, that's what gets me up. It's being able to make sure we're doing what we have to and doing what we can for you guys.
Awesome. Dr. Pink, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it.
You guys are kind to let me be a part of it. Thank you.
Huge. I don't know how many more huges I can use, but you can insert as many as you need because I can't think of a number that describes how thankful we are for Dr. Pink for stopping in. I mean, every time I feel like when we speak with him or hear from him, I know I always learn something new. I know a lot of people learn something new. And it's just incredible to see his philosophy and his take on everything because it's such a unique way to think about it. And I just really enjoy the way that he speaks because, I mean, he is a storyteller and he's one of the best at it.
Yeah, Dr. Pink's a class act. And to be able to have him on the podcast, huge honor. And, man, we can't thank him enough to be able to take time out of his super, super busy schedule.
Because for sure.
Month and a half that we've been trying to plan this out. So
pretty much, yeah.
And huge thanks to Dr. Pink for coming on the show.
Huge thanks. So we'll go really quick before we get into NFL draft stuff. I know you guys are excited for that. We'll go through the Ferris State report here from over the last week and certainly got a lot on deck here coming up this weekend, but obviously covered some things here from last week. Obviously, softball getting the wins in that early on Saturday game, ended up dropping Sunday's game against Purdue and Parkside, respectively. Backwards. For Parkside, Purdue, respectively.
Earlier it was flip-flopped. So
yeah, of course. And then golf winning the conference championship.
Huge.
I mean, that's huge for the program. Men's tennis winning the regular season championship. Huge. But I think when you see really how all the dogs are doing right now, and especially when you see now all the GLIAC honorees are coming out. We got a bunch of tennis guys that were awarded on men's and women's side as well, as we'll see the softball and the track ones come out likely next week once everything is concluded fully. But I think you see, especially when you look at where every team is at, I mean, I don't see a team, especially after we saw the spring game, especially here in football, like no team feels like when you look at their roster and when you look at what they did all year, there's no reason to degrade any team. Like they're still building. And even though there's going to be teams that lose crucial seniors and upperclassmen, there's no real team that's like, oh yeah, they're probably going to have a big drop this year. Like I'm looking across I can't see
stacked,
one,
man.
I can't see
the
one.
The depth across all the sports is right there. And that's the crazy thing about it is not a lot of schools can say that where each sport is probably just going to keep on with the same amount of success that they saw the year before. And that's really what makes this program, what makes this school even better when it comes to athletics.
Yeah, I mean, it is just huge. But some tennis players to highlight. Freshman of the year, Eric Kovacs. Congrats to him as well as Coach Doran. Coach of the year. We had the coach of the year in GLIAC tennis on our podcast.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, we did.
That's pretty cool. So some other nominees, Jan Kapul, Eric Kovacs, both first teamers, as well as Benjamin Lordy, also in that list for first team all GLIAC. Second team, Yannick Madur, also on the show. Shout out to Yannick as well. And then honorable mention, Asunge Ndumbe is a freshman. Already an honorable mention in all conference play.
Kid's a gamer, man.
He is an absolute gamer. Over on the women's side, also some nominees that were taken in the all GLIAC selection list. Of course, one of the more notable in the first team list, Sophie DeVita, getting a first team all GLIAC honorees. So congratulations to her, as well as Morgan Waller, second team all GLIAC, and then Anna Hernandez rounding out as an honorable mention in the all GLIAC honorees for women's tennis. So still getting award winners, man. Certainly cool. And we did have the ESPYs as well just a little while ago, and that was certainly pretty entertaining. So had it in Wink this year. Didn't get to have it in the UC due to scheduling issues by what I've heard. But certainly was a pretty solid. I will say this on air, and it deserves attention. Kai Service and Mallory McCartney's opening video was absolutely hysterical.
I saw a couple clips of it.
Oh my gosh. Like the fact that we had Kai dressed up and playing volleyball in a Ferris State uniform is one of the greatest things that we've shown on that video board. It was funny. Absolutely hysterical. And those two did a really good job. Obviously, we've chatted with both of them here on the podcast. Great characters, great hosts as well. A lot of honorees as well. Carson Golker, Mr. Bulldog of the Year, Caleb Murphy, the Male Athlete of the Year. Certainly some great honorees. I can't remember all of them off the top of my head. Eddie Jewett, can he do it? Yes, he can. He ended up getting the Rookie of the Year on the men's side. And there's just some really cool moments there, especially getting just to see the President's Award winners and seeing all that, as well as they highlighted the Bandana Project, which is a really cool project that's still up and coming here at the University in athletics. So some really cool overall, just soaking it all in really is cool. I believe Nikki May won Mrs. Bulldog on that side, as well as Chloe Idoni was Women's Athlete of the Year, I believe. And I can't remember who Rookie of the Year was on the women's side, but I'll be sure to try to think of that here on the end of the show, and I'll try to mention it. But certainly just a cool overall, getting everybody together and, getting to chat it up. Obviously, most of the time there's teams staying within teams, but then you see that little bit of crossover when you're up there and going up to get your award and you get to say hi to some people. It's pretty cool. So certainly was a memorable event. And even Dr. Fink himself was there and spoke, as well as even though Steve was not necessarily in the building, Mr. Brocklebank, of course, our AD, he sent us a video over the video board. So that was pretty cool since, CCHA hockey has to do their meetings before our SBs, but no, it's fine. It happens. I know there's business stuff going on. So, but yeah, I think that's all we got here for the report. Pretty light load here.
Yeah, not really
normal.
Yeah, not really too crazy, honestly. It's weird winding down and the school year's winding down, Brandon. We graduate in like a week and a half.
Oh my.
Or I guess a week and a day.
Week and a day.
Jeez, man.
Oh no. It just set in pretty bad. It's spooky. It is very spooky now. But I think we'll still have fun at graduation. I still
think so too.
I'm hoping it's not hot like it has been years past.
Me too. I'm also hoping that it's not hot because that's gonna really stink.
Yeah, because it's gonna be what, 4:00 when we're actually
4:00. Yeah, and then I don't know how many people are graduating from the College of Arts and Science.
Gotta be a lot. That and business are absolutely loaded when it comes to
like a 400 person.
Could be.
Dude, my high school was like 110, so it flew by.
Oh, I think we're gonna have more than that.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, that's gonna be wild.
I'm in the dude, you're at the last part of it too. Your name's at the back of it.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's seating by alphabet or if it's actually.
No. So
I don't actually remember how that works.
You can sit wherever, I think, but you have to you have your name card, and then when you go up, like it's kind of just based off of that. I think you go row by row, and then you just hand them your name card.
Oh, so you can sit wherever you want.
I was looking at I forget who it was, Kelly Tolnar or something. She sent out an email.
Oh yeah, stuff, so. I probably have that email saved. I just didn't look at it long enough because I was like, I'll look at that next week. Because obviously we got stuff going on.
We'll see how it goes. But if you guys want to sneak into Wink and see me and Brandon graduate at 4:00 on Saturday at Jim Wink Arena, then be our guest.
Yeah, I hear there's extra tickets swirling around. Don't know where, but that's just my sources. I'm not going to reveal my sources.
But where can we get those?
I hear there's some
that want to show up.
Oh, I think I might be able to hook you up. We'll have to get through this episode, and I'll hook Joe up here with some extra tickets. But anyway, that's enough Ferris State stuff. Let's get right into it. NFL Draft Round 1 in the books here as we're listening to this here on Friday morning. If you're just joining us, if not, it's a little bit of a review, but that's all right. Wow, what
went down on the NFL draft.
Not chalk. Big boards thrown out the window. You're getting the guy that you want, and it don't matter where he is on the big board. You're drafting him immediately, and the Lions were certainly the highlight, but they were not the only team.
Dude, also, before we really get into it, can ESPN stop trying to push Will Levis as the next second coming of the greatest quarter? He's an all right quarterback. He was in the SEC. He did all right. He didn't even break the record for Kentucky passing touchdowns in the season. He was 4th most.
Yeah.
And you're going to try to push him as a number 1 pick? That's not even a question. And then the thing is everybody knows now, ever since Zach Wilson's thing where he threw a 50-yard dime on the run opposite way, and then Will Levis does the same thing, people aren't surprised or people aren't going to be fooled by that because they see how bad Zach Wilson has turned out. I don't think people people have been accustomed to being fooled by that type of stuff. And I called it, man. I said he was going to fall, and then he did.
You called it, my friend.
I did call it. And then, I don't know, that's been my one gripe about this is that ESPN and like the NFL has been like pushing Will Levis like, he might go first, actually. And then he was like a 98% first rounder. He's not going to fall to the second round. And then it's like, well, if you really look at it, there's 4 other quarterbacks that are better than him in this draft. I don't know why you would try to push him as a top 5 pick. Rip his bank account, though, man.
Yeah.
He was probably thinking he was going to get a nice like $30 million signing bonus. And then now it's probably going to be 5.
Not even.
Yeah. For a second rounder.
Brutal.
That's tough, brother.
We do know a name from last year that went through the same thing. One named Malik Willis.
Mm-hmm. And look at him. He sucks.
Yeah, unfortunately.
And look at him. He's bad.
I like how you had to highlight that point of it. But anyway, I was just talking about the signing bonus.
No,
there you go.
Exactly.
Yeah, but he's still pretty bad. Anyway, some notable picks here. Obviously, Bryce Young goes number 1 overall to the Panthers. I think that was the least surprising pick in the whole draft. Obviously, number 1. I think that was a pretty set in stone selection. The Texans, though, get CJ Stroud and trade for number 3 to get Will Anderson. So they get CJ Stroud and Will Anderson in a deal that I believe sends their first and seconds next year to the Cards, which, I mean, if you're the Cardinals, you need all the help you can get. So obviously being able to trade back, I think was probably a good move for them, even though they ended up trading up with the Lions, which we just got, and we'll get here in just a minute. But bold move there from Nick Caserio, obviously with a new head coach, D'Amico Ryans. So that's a definite interesting selection. But hey, you got 2 of the best guys in the draft, one at the quarterback and one at the linebacker
position.
That
is true. They needed so much. I thought they were going to pull like a little, send draft, what is his name? Jackson Smith and Jigba down at what they used to have. What was it, like the 8th pick or something like that?
12, yeah.
12
There was a lot of people that thought it would be Stroud and Jackson Smith and Jigba.
You need both of those type of players, and you could have just gotten 2 guys who already have the chemistry. But I honestly like this pick because you take out basically, you still need to kind of beef up both sides of the ball, but to be able to get a pretty solid start on both of those, I think you're going to be all right. CJ Stroud, I'm skeptical about how he's going to turn out in the NFL because of, the cognitive test, but also cognitive test isn't always everything because what was it? McNabb did it and he scored like a 6 and he was pretty all right in the NFL. So he should be all right, but I'm just interested to see how the Texans go because they've been in a rebuild for quite a long time. And I would feel bad for their fans if this one doesn't work out, especially when you got 2 and 3 on the board.
Yeah. I think it'll be very interesting to see how their franchise goes from there with those 2 picks because they went all in this draft right out of the gate. So that shows that they want to be aggressive here in this first draft. But some other notable names here to go over here. Obviously, the number 4 selection was very notable. Would it be Will Levis? Would it be Anthony Richardson? And it ends up being the man from Florida. So Anthony Richardson goes to the Colts. They look at the upside and they like that better than when Will Levis.
That's a big time pick. I like that pick.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think the hardest part, I think for a lot of people, and I know like when we and my buddies were having this discussion as we were watching it and we were kind of trying to predict it last night was when the Colts obviously were looking at a quarterback, do they have somebody that they can groom Anthony Richardson? I mean, not really. But where you are as a franchise, I mean, you're trying to fully start over, like they have some pieces, but they were not a great football team last year. They were not good. And then obviously the head coaching change made it look a lot worse. So I think at that point, I mean, you're better off taking one guy that you absolutely trust than trying to take the safe pick and trying to build it up from there, even though you know the potential in one player is higher when you groom him on later a couple years.
Yeah, give it 2 or 3 years, and that offense is going to be so versatile, especially with Richardson's ability to get out of the pocket and scramble. He's a big guy, and he's an athlete. I don't think with Will Levis, you're going to be looking at having that ability where you can have a little bit lesser of an O-line now because Richardson can scramble a little bit. Yeah, some people say it's not the best for trying to develop young quarterbacks or trying to get them to adapt to the NFL system and be able to kind of get better with throwing. Anthony Richardson has the cannon. He doesn't have, I say he doesn't have the accuracy. He has the accuracy. It's a little bit off compared to, Bryce Young or Will Levis, but his skill set is so diverse that I think, especially with the Colts, that's what they need because they've been going with quarterbacks like Peyton Manning, who is pretty much just a set-in-stone pocket passer. Andrew Luck, he would scramble every once in a while, pocket passer. Phillip Rivers, pocket passer. Matt Ryan, pocket passer. Nick Foles, pocket passer. You stay with that for a while. Yeah, you had some success when it came up to Phillip Rivers because you made the playoffs. But you kind of need to switch it up, because if you don't switch it up soon, then you might be left in the dust, especially in that division that they're in, because they want to be able to make some noise. And especially with Anthony Richardson, you're going to be able to find that with a guy who's going to be able to make something out of nothing. And you get last season, you had nothing a lot of the times.
Yeah, I think it'll be very interesting to see where they go from there. And I think especially when you look at the Colts franchise, I mean, they just need to kind of refine their identity. I mean, they were a really gritty, defensive heavy team a couple years ago, and ever since then,
it's was sick.
Just been up in the air. So now I think they're going to try a new direction, a new look from Chris Ballard and company. So we'll see how it goes. Devin Witherspoon goes number 5 to the Seahawks. A little bit of surprising move, especially for Lions fans, as that was a guy that we were tabbed for taking quite a bit of time, but he's a really good football player. I think he'll turn out really well for them as well, as Cardinals trade up for Paris Johnson Jr. Certainly a really talented player as well at the tackle position. Not as flashy, but I mean, the Cardinals, you need a lot of help. So take the best player available. And in their case, it was an offensive lineman. So they get that. The Raiders pick Tyree Wilson. I think that's a really good pick for them. That fills a big need. The Falcons take Bijan Robinson out of Texas. Now, they had Tyler Algier really groomed to have a really nice couple good games last season. Like, you look at these last 4 games, he was pretty much unstoppable. But they get Bijan Robinson. They have a nice little tandem there. And now you kind of go into this season with Desmond Ridder. You have a couple of weapons needs, and obviously they can address those in later rounds. But, I mean, they're showing they showed some big improvement in free agency defensively. Now offensively, they're kind of building that up with these young guys. So they could be a little bit of a scary team right now in a NFC South division that looks very, very bleak right now.
Yeah, that's true. It's interesting because for them, I wasn't really expecting. That's the thing, especially when you there's 2 running backs that get taken so early in the draft, because running backs have been in my opinion, running backs have been a position that's kind of on the out a little bit with how valuable they are. Of course, Lions, with last year, we had Swift and we had Jamal, and Jamal, set the record or whatever. And he was a valuable player. But if you look at them as a whole, you haven't really been seeing any running backs that have taken over the league. People thought Zeke was going to be that way. He's fallen off. People thought Swift was going to be that way when we drafted him. He's kind of been injured, as well as he's not really a guy that can, have that takeover ability. And honestly, me blanking on whatever other running backs I'm trying to come up with an example for this explains and is a good explanation for why taking running backs so early is not always the best thing, because it's just been evolved out of the game so far. And for them to take one this early, it's interesting. Hopefully it works out, because I did like Bijan Robinson at Texas and he did really well. But compared to that division, as well as NFL defensive lines, are you going to be able to make noise right at the start? We'll see, because, Derrick Henry is really the only one that kind of out of college was able to come at this. But that's really the only reason, is because he was like a 6'6" monster. So that's the biggest thing. I don't know if Bijan Robinson's got the size or the strength.
I mean, he definitely has a lot of the tools, but it'll be very interesting to see how he's using that system. I love the kid, and I certainly think he's deserving of a first-round pick. It's the value of running backs that creates all these questions. So let's go right to it then. Let's waste no time. 12 and 18, Lions take Jahmyr Gibbs at 12. Most surprising pick in the draft. You can't argue otherwise.
Surprised a lot.
This one was interesting, and I've been thinking about this quite a bit over the last night, because obviously when me and my buddies, obviously Lions fans, were watching this draft, well, except for Canary, when we made that trade, we were like, oh, we're going back. Gonzo's still there. We're getting Gonzo at 12. We just fleeced and went down, and we still got him. And then we get Jahmyr Gibbs. Obviously,
interesting.
Whoa, where was this kind of idea going? Like, because immediately when you're going to look at draft grades all over the place. Jahmyr Gibbs is a D, C+, C pick. Not considerably the worst pick in this first round. But is he really, though? This kid is very, very talented. And I know probably some people are like, oh, you're obviously saying this because you're going to be positive for a Lions fan. You love Dan Campbell. You love Brad Holmes. Well, yeah, whatever. Take that aside. Jahmyr Gibbs fills a need on this football team right now. And that's the thing. Some people are like, wait, you have Montgomery, you have DeAndre Swift. We don't have an airback, and now we do. Because we're going to need weapons to throw to right out of the gate. And who is one that we could have used that accidentally got himself booted for 6 games for gambling in a facility? J-Mo, one of Jahmyr's teammates. That was something that they needed. And what Jahmyr Gibbs will bring, I think this really tells a lot about the outlook of where this football team is going. Because obviously when J-Mo gets back, and then you bring back Marv over from Jacksonville again, then you obviously have Amon-Ra, you have Josh Reynolds, you have that crew, Khalif Raymond, so on and so forth. But now you have Jahmyr Gibbs that fills a need in the depth of the running back position. It's not as big of a need as defense, as far as defensive line or linebacker. I understand that, or cornerback. I understand that. But now when you have Jahmyr Gibbs in there, this is going to unlock new scheme for Ben Johnson. And who doesn't want to do that? Because this guy can line up on the outside. He can line up in the slot. And he's a really, really good route runner. The only reason they didn't need him to run as many routes is obviously Alabama receiving core is pretty darn good. And they don't necessarily need a running back in there all the time when you got 4 NFL caliber receivers out there on the outside for Bryce Young to throw to. So that's the biggest thing I think when you look at it is positional wise, running backs don't necessarily get drafted that high. And that's why people are saying that's a reach. I understand that. But then after the draft, we get reports out that there was teams that were texting after this pick was made that, oh yeah, Jahmyr Gibbs was going to go 17, 18. He was going to go and somebody's going to trade up to go get him in the next couple picks and he wouldn't have been there at 18. If that's the case and that's true, that's a great move for Brad Holmes. Obviously the 18th pick as well, Jack Campbell, oh my gosh, fits Detroit perfectly.
A lot.
Is it a little bit of a reach? Sure. Would he have been there necessarily if we would have waited? Maybe. But here's the thing I want to stress. If you're a GM and you have a player that you know fits your system, that is a really good football player, he's a first-round talent, and it fits your need, and you want him, and you know you can get him, why are you wasting your time? Go get him. I don't care if it's at 24 or if at 6. If that's the football player that's best for your franchise, I don't want you to be completely relying on the numbers, because if you rely on the numbers, you're going to love guys. How many GMs have done that? They won't say they will, but you know for a fact probably half those teams last night were banking on some of these groups of receivers being picked in the early teens, and none of them went down until the 20s. Mm-hmm. That's the thing. If you are prepared to be solely on the analytics, on the mock drafts, you will lose. You will absolutely lose. You got to get the guys you love, and they did that. And that's why I'm still sticking with the Lions, even though a lot of these Motor City faithful now have turned into haters overnight and can't stand it, because it's like, we did this in year 1, year 2. We got guys that we wanted as a franchise and that fit the culture, and we had the best 2 drafts in the last 10 years that Bob Quinn could never have replicated. And now after one day, we're already panicking. I don't understand that, guys.
We got so, like, especially in those last 2 drafts, we were like, okay, first one, great. Second one, even better. So when you have such high expectations, and when you realize we are probably just 1 or 2 pieces away from being a team that can compete and make it to a division championship or even to a conference championship this upcoming 1-2 years, everybody has an opinion and everybody thinks they're the GM when it comes to this type of deal. Especially when you look at, Jahmyr Gibbs and we look at Jack Campbell. Everybody is saying right now, it's like, oh, well, 4 of the next 5 picks were all offensive players. It's like hindsight is 2020 now. You can say, yeah, we could have probably waited. He might have dropped down, but if he was really good and if he's taken this early, obviously it stuck out to both Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell, because being a great player is one thing. Fitting in the culture that Detroit has now makes them even better. It can make a okay player great because they're able to fit in that system. And that's the one thing, especially now with these drafts, that I'm looking forward to see when the season comes up, is are they going to be able to fit in this type of situation? Because right now it's a team atmosphere. It's not really me first at all. It's all about being able to adapt to it. And especially for these 2 picks, I think if we're taking them this early and people have this type of problem with it, Dan Campbell and Holmes, they have a thought process in mind, and they know that these guys can fit in, and that's what I'm looking forward to, and that's how I know that this is going to be a successful draft.
Yeah, I think especially this also says that DeAndre Swift's future is in question, and obviously that's not against him as a football player, but this is a business at the end of the day, and he's been a guy that's been very injury-ridden, and he has really had not necessarily a full year of success, and with that in mind, are you going to be going in with David Montgomery's number 1 guy? Because Chicago pushed him into the ground when they gave him 100% of the touches over their whole season, and then he got wore down, and that's how you had to get Khalil Herbert drafted that 1 year, and then obviously then he had to play majority of this last year. So then now obviously you have 3 depth there, so that's okay. Like, that is not a bad thing. that we had to stack up at that point because he's not necessarily a running back. And that's why I want to stress he is a weapon because you can put him out in the slot. He doesn't have a whole lot of tape from Alabama, but when you saw what he did in workouts, it was really, really good. What he did out of the backfield and what he did at the line of scrimmage running routes. And that's a big thing that this team needs. So it'll be very interesting though, because we still got 3 second-round picks. I would expect fully that we're going to be going all in on defense on probably all 3 of these picks. We'll probably take a defensive lineman. We'll probably take a corner, and we'll probably go up to try to bulk up the line once again in that 3rd pick or whatever, in whatever order. And I don't care. I don't care what order it is. I trust the Brad Holmes. I trust Dan Campbell. I know in position-wise in analytics, these are all reaches, but if they know what they're doing, I'm not going to judge somebody that's got so much more credibility than I ever will on this stuff. So we'll see how it works out in the end. And then obviously in September, in October, November, December, we'll probably be able to know what that's going to mean moving forward. So
yeah, absolutely.
It'll be very interesting. But some notable winners and losers maybe here, Joe. Some picks that you didn't like in this first round.
Interesting one that I saw was Buffalo Bills taking a tight end.
Yeah, that one, Kincaid.
That was interesting, seeing that they got Dawson Knox. Still, and he was a solid tight end for him. I'm interested to see, is Dawson on his way out? What's the deal? But Dawson and Dalton sounded exactly the same, so maybe they just got a little bit confused with what was going on. But very interesting. I mean, he was one of the best tight ends of the whole college football scene, especially with Utah being able to go so far. He was a very big pivotal point of how that team was able to have that type of success. Other ones they weren't really sticking out to me too much because obviously I definitely follow Detroit and what they need, but other kind of teams I just listen on draft day, like what they need. And then I kind of just base it off of that, but not really anything else that's been sticking out too much to me. I'm just more surprised that this was definitely a very defensive heavy draft. I feel like, other than the middle where there's about 4 or 5 offensive players. But if you really look at it outside of the top 5, it was a lot of O-line and a lot of defense.
Yeah, there was not as many offensive players picked. And I think one that I certainly liked on the offensive line side, Pittsburgh, Broderick Jones, I think was a really good selection. They moved up a couple picks there from that and gave up a 4th rounder, I believe, to draft Broderick Jones. But that's a big need that they have needed for a lot of years, and they've not been really willing to go get it. Now they finally did. And I think that's going to help Kenny Pickett a lot, and that's going to help that running back room a lot, and that's going to certainly help the offense as a whole. And I think that's a really, really good pick because he's a very ferocious offensive tackle, Broderick Jones is. So he's going to be exactly what Pittsburgh envisioned of him. And I think the Seahawks also, I mean, Witherspoon and Smith and Jigma, 2 of the best playmakers in this draft overall. And certainly getting both of them, I don't think was at all expected for them. So I think they're very happy with that. Some that I did not like overall from this draft. I think also the Eagles getting pretty much all the Georgia Bulldogs back on that defense. Pretty interesting. One pick I did not like in particularly, the Jets taking Will McDonald. Then again, same kind of scenario with Detroit. If you like that guy and you want him, go get him right away. I think that there's a lot of depth at that position at edge rusher, especially kind of going into round 2. So I was kind of surprised that they decided to take the 1st rounder to take him. But he's a very good player. He's got some potential. But I mean, he was a little bit more inconsistent than some of the other players in the class. So that gives me a little bit of concern, but I think he still could turn out to be a very good football player. And I think that also one pick that I was a little bit interested about was I think it was who was it? Anton Harrison for Jacksonville. They do need help at offensive tackle. I understand that. And Anton Harrison he's a mobile guy. He's not necessarily he's bigger in frame. But as far as raw power compared to some of the other tackles, he kind of lacks that. But I would love to see him make up for that. I would love to see him show that. And because I mean, he didn't bench press, he didn't do any of those strength tangible drills at the combine. So it'll be very interesting to see where that lands up. And I think when you look at how this really came about, I think you saw him kind of slipping down there a little bit. But then there were some other guys also on the board at that point that they could have went with. But I think that it'll be very interesting to see where he goes. But I think that necessarily that late in the pick, I think it was a solid pick. But I think that there's going to be a lot of development that he'll need. And there's not as many guys in Jacksonville I think he can learn that from as opposed to some other teams. So it'll just require a lot of coaching, which I personally did not really kind of see in this pick. But that's when I was questioning just a little bit. But then again, I would say definitely the more questioning one out of that one was probably Will McDonald. So
last kind of thought I had, I didn't have this exactly when they drafted, but I was kind of looking at some forums and stuff and some other discussion boards about the draft kind of this morning and last night when it was going down, is with the Packers 13th pick when they chose Van Ness there. He was the edge out of Iowa. I kind of thought they were going to go a quarterback here. And that's where I thought Levis was going to go, because I thought that could have fit in pretty well. Levis is better than Love. Let's be honest. Love, I don't know why they ever chose Jordan Love, because that was a bad pick in general, because he hasn't seen the field. And when he's seen the field, maybe like handful of plays, maybe. And I think if you chose Levis, I feel like he's a second round. To me, he's probably more of an early second round, but for everybody that was hyping him up and stuff, I thought that was going to be where he would have landed, because he wouldn't have gone top 5 at all. But the Packers are like one of the only ones that really, I feel like, have a need for a quarterback, because with Love being that career backup so far, and for him to kind of be thrown to the wolves in the NFC North, that's going to be really competitive next year with Minnesota and Detroit, you're going to be struggling with it. And if you give him that type of space where you have that kind of competition between both Love and Levis, I thought they were going to be able to kind of complement each other there. But Packers, not really sure. I mean, if you go with the edge rusher, it's whatever. I mean, I wasn't really paying too much attention to what the Packers needed, but that's kind of where I thought Will Levis was going to go if he was going to go first round. But the pick with Lucas Van Ness was funny. Did you see his family like basically swarming him during the pick and stuff?
Did you know there's a story behind? So I had actually looked this up as you were talking about Lucas Van Ness, because I had heard something about this, and apparently Lucas Van Ness's girlfriend, her name's Frankie Komet. You know whose sister that is? Cole Komet, the Chicago Bear tight end. Dang. I didn't know this, and that is absolutely hilarious. The fact that they're going to play against each other. I mean, that's crazy to me. But I mean, that's kind of a cool, unique. But yeah, I would agree with you there that Lucas Van Ness is a really good player. He's very raw. Some people would say this is a reach, of course, obviously with the consideration of position of where these guys were picked. But I think he has a lot of potential. And obviously there at Iowa, he wasn't necessarily the starting rotational guy, or I should say starting guy. He was more of that rotational specialty guy, and he was so good at it. I mean, he could be a 4-down guy. Yeah. And that'll be something that the Packers can now experiment, because they got a pretty decent defensive line. It's not the best, definitely not the worst, but they have a position where he can be kind of freely molded into their system with ease and not necessarily have to be worrying about picking a guy like Jalen Carter or Tyree Wilson that's going to have to play right off the shoot for whatever franchise he's doing. You can kind of get molded in there a little bit. So, plus, I mean, staying in the Midwest country, obviously going from the corn land in Iowa to the cheese land in Wisconsin. So obviously not big of an adjustment there.
Yeah, no sure.
But yeah, I mean, this was a wild draft, man. I mean, I'll be very interested to see what happens in round 2, round 3, round 4, round 5, 6, and 7, which will be happening this weekend. But
one of the big names I thought was going to be a surprise first round, but probably is going to fall like late second. I thought Hendon Hooker was probably going to make a splash.
Yeah, I'd heard there's some buzz about him to Tampa at 19, but they obviously went in a different direction with Cansey. But
going to be a big difference of signing bonus on that one.
Joey Porter also still on the board after round 1. That one surprised me a little bit. I thought I think it was the Giants that picked Banks. I thought Porter might go there. But I think at the end of the day, I think these are a lot of scheme fits, because especially I think it was Emmanuel Forbes was picked to the Commanders, which that guy's a really good corner. He's a primary zone corner. He's not a man-to-man corner like Witherspoon. So that kind of fits what Ron Rivera, I think, wants for his defense a little bit more, especially now that they got a lot of those guys that can kind of roam around with obviously they have oh my gosh, I'm literally forgetting the name. Jamin Davis from last year from Kentucky, versatile linebacker. Then as well, were they the ones that, who was the guy that was Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah? Was he drafted there? I believe it was, or was he to the Cleveland Browns? I can't actually remember. But anyway,
the Browns.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they're going to have to find some sort of scheme now to really neutralize some of these NFC East offenses. So I think that's going to be something that's going to be interesting to look forward to with that selection there, because I think Emmanuel Forbes really fits in that team pretty well. And he could be a day one starter for them because they're a little weaker at corner in consideration. I'm sure they wanted Gonzo to be there. Gonzo to the Patriots is an absolute slam dunk for them. But I think so. You look at where that team is at, and I think there's still a lot of questions that need to be answered for that defense. And I think he's a guy that can go right in there day one and probably make some noise.
Yeah, I'm very excited too. The funniest thing about this day is like to see all the, I mean, especially with Will Levis, how he's visibly angry about not going to the first round because like that's just a big miss out on like millions and millions of dollars. And I mean, I would be too, because if I was projected to go top 10 and get a probably $25 million plus signing bonus, and then I don't go in the first round, I'd be visibly upset too.
Yeah, that's unfortunate for him because I'm sure, like, as much as at the end of the day, you hate his videos about the eating a rotten banana and
weird,
putting mayo in his coffee.
He's a weird guy.
I think that's all for show a little bit, but at the end of the day, I mean, it is a football player missing out on a chance to really support his family, so you can feel for him there. I think there's a couple places that he could go potentially here later on, maybe even in the potentially the second round, honestly. I mean, there's some teams that still need some quarterback help for the future. I think you can consider the Rams in that conversation. You can consider I would consider probably saying that the Commanders again, 47 could be interested in that department. The Buccaneers, obviously, all they have is Kyle Trask at the moment at 50. So I think there's a couple different places he could go in the second round. But at the end of the day, I think just some people are concerned about what they saw on tape because his decision-making isn't in his processing. You know, he tested better on the test than CJ Stroud did. He on tape did not look necessarily like he was really fully understanding of some of those coverages going on. But then again, I'm just a guy sitting in a chair that knows some things about football. I don't know everything about football. So that's just my thought at the end of the day. But it'll be very interesting to see where this draft goes. I don't know. I'll be watching. You guys will be watching. And it should be a really interesting day 2 and day 3 there from Kansas City.
Yeah. Very, very excited to see what happens.
Fun stuff. But thank you guys.
Love the draft.
Love the draft. Love the draft at all. Thank you guys for supporting the show. We appreciate you. I mean, episodes like today is what we've been dreaming for, and you guys made that happen. And it's been a very special year. Obviously, we're not done yet, but we're feeling closer to the end now as we come towards the end of the semester. But we appreciate you all making sure that you subscribe as well. Been getting good feedback on some episodes, so we appreciate that. Keep it coming. You can answer questions on Spotify as well as you can follow along. Where at, Joe?
Spotify, Apple Podcasts, I don't know, Google Podcasts, something like that, Zencastr, everything else. I mean, you got YouTube you can subscribe to. Whatever suits your fancy. We're on basically every platform.
Literally, pretty much. I mean, we're getting there. I haven't experimented with SoundCloud.
Really?
Yeah. It's a little bit of a hassle with feeds. So that's why I ended up not. But if you are a SoundCloud connoisseur, let us know and maybe we'll put it on SoundCloud. We'll make it work for the fans if they want it. If you want it, we'll go get it. It doesn't matter where you're getting picks at. We're going to take whatever measures we need to make sure you guys are satisfied, just like the Lions in the draft. Mm-hmm. Right?
Can't wait for it, man.
I know, right? That was pretty bad. Anyway, let's end this episode at the MESP Instagram and Twitter. And until next time,
take care, everybody.